And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
Flibbity-jibbity nonsense.
I thought it was terrific.
Not just big, it's yeah.
Let's go.
Welcome. Thanks for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jeff Morey, and I am your host. Well, election 2024 is officially behind us, and Donald Trump has been reelected as the 47th President of the United States. In addition, Republicans have reclaimed a majority in the Senate, and as of the airing of this show, appear at least poised to maintain control of the House of Representatives as well. Reaction around the country has, of course, been mixed based on party lines, with conservatives and Trump supporters joyful to see another Trump term and increased Republican leadership, and Democrats and liberals mostly all unhappy with the results. Liberal celebrities such as Jimmy Kimmel, who was actually crying during his monologue, and Billie Eilish, who said that Trump's victory was a war on women. Rapper Cardi B, who has spoken at Harris rallies, posted a photo on Instagram with the caption, "I hate y'all bad." My question is this: when all these celebrities such as J-Lo, Whoopi Goldberg, Tom Hanks, Miley Cyrus, and George Clooney that have said they would leave the country if Trump won, when are you leaving? As a result of the election, the stock market has reacted. The S&P rose 2.5%, its biggest one-day gain in over 2 years. The NASDAQ Composite Index moved 3% higher. The Russell 2000, that tracks smaller companies that are considered more volatile to the fate of the economy, jumped nearly 5%, its biggest increase in 2 years, and the Dow gained 3.6%. Bitcoin also rose significantly, and possibly most important, the US dollar rose against the currencies of some of our major trading partners. This is a very positive yet still very early sign that hopefully the economy will start to turn around and revert towards the one we experienced during Trump's first term, when gas prices were significantly lower and the cost of goods and services was also much more affordable. Leaving the political world finally, following up with a story that I previously reported on in a previous episode, 3 people have been arrested in Argentina and charged with being connected to the death of former One Direction member Liam Payne. The prosecutor, in a statement, said that illicit conduct was discovered from which 3 people were charged with the crimes of abandonment of a person followed by death, supply, and facilitation of narcotics. After previously reading about and following the story, I didn't personally see at the time how anyone else could not be involved. We will wait to see the outcome of the investigation in the hearing. In South Carolina, dozens of monkeys have escaped from a research facility in Yamasee, prompting police to urge residents to lock their doors and windows until they have been captured. The monkeys escaped from the Alpha Genesis Primate Research Center, and police describe them as weighing between 6 to 7 pounds and all female. The research center claims that the monkeys have never been used for testing due to their young age and that they are too young to carry diseases. They said that a caretaker accidentally left the door to the enclosure where they were being held unsecured. Alpha Genesis CEO Greg Westergaard called the escape frustrating and said he hoped the monkeys would ultimately return on their own free will. Keeping with the animal news theme, in New York, the New York Department of Environmental Conservation has been receiving bomb threats after people have learned about the seizure and euthanization of social media star Peanut the Squirrel. Peanut the Squirrel, who has over 784,000 Instagram followers, was confiscated from his home in Pine City, New York on Wednesday, October 30th, after reports from the public about the potentially unsafe housing of wildlife that could carry rabies and illegal keeping of wildlife as pets. Peanut was owned by social media star Mark Lingo, who first rescued Peanut after he saw his mom get hit by a car. Peanut had lived with Mark and his cat, Chloe, for the last 5 years. Peanut was seized and euthanized by authorities, but we still do not have a clear answer as to why Peanut was euthanized. New York authorities have not disclosed the results of the rabies test. Way to go, New York. There are homeless people, crumbling infrastructure, trash, and rats, and you decide to use your resources to raid a house like it was that of a drug dealer and kill a squirrel. I hope that all those involved feel great about themselves. My final news story leads perfectly into this week's show's topic. Zhaji Li, a 39-year-old Chinese citizen, was arrested this week for trying to break into President Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. Li has reportedly tried multiple times to gain access to Mar-a-Lago in an attempt to speak to President Trump. Li claims that he has information about Trump's most recent assassination attempt. Does anyone think that maybe he actually may hold some actual info or intel and that China may somehow be involved? So that being said, and now that the 2024 election is behind us, I think now's a good time to have this discussion. America is being attacked from within. Forget the good old days when wars were transparent and you knew for the most part who you were fighting. Yes, in classic warfare, you had your battle lines drawn, country versus country, friend versus foe, and you met on the battlefield. Using tanks and planes and soldiers, wars were fought and won through brutal combat and attrition. Well, no more, my friends. This is the 21st century, and wars are rarely fought on the battlefield. No, 21st century, which is now being referred to as fifth generation warfare, is now a war of narratives. I recently bought and read a book by retired General Michael Flynn and Boone Cutler called The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. While I'm still unsure about Flynn himself, some call him a hero and a patriot, some call him evil and say he's attacking democracy itself, he did have some interesting things to say in his book, and definitely brings forward the stark reality that warfare is now incredibly complex, and the challenge now is simply identifying who the true adversaries are. It is so hard in this day and age to know who truly represents the people and who represents big tech, mainstream media, the U.S. and foreign governments, and who's just playing all sides to their own special interest. I tell my buddies all the time that for the most part on the world stage to most other countries, America is the enemy. While I will always try to shine a bright light on the deep corruption in all levels of our government, that will never change my view that I am a proud American and I believe in this country and believe that we can right the ship. The most disgusting thing to me is aristocrats and politicians that will, and more importantly, do sell out our country to foreign governments for money and power. I will highlight a few of these individuals in this episode, but the one power in particular that I want to address is the one whom I personally view as our biggest adversary and threat. China. Yes, China. The good old Chinese Communist Party and its president Xi Jinping. Some have called him the Red Emperor. For 12 years now, he has ruled the People's Republic of China. Born on June 15, 1953, Xi is the son of Chinese Communist veteran Xi Zongxum. He was exiled as a teenager following his father's purge during the Cultural Revolution. Living in a yidong, which is an earth shelter, in the village of Liangjiahe, pronunciation there, I'm not sure, where he joined the CCP and worked as the party secretary. He went to Tsinghua University, where he studied chemical engineering and rose through the political ranks in China's coastal provinces. The following years, he held multiple different roles, including serving as governor of 2 different provinces, continuing to rise through the ranks. In 2008, he was designated as Hu Jintao's, who was previously paramount leader of China, as his successor. In 2016, he officially received the title of Leadership Corps from the CCP. In 2017, the Communist Party unanimously voted to incorporate Xi Jinping thought into the Chinese constitution, which according to Chinese law rivals now cannot challenge China's strongman without threatening Communist Party rule. In 2018, Xi was supposed to step down, but the CCP actually changed their constitution to remove the previous rule of 2 term limits so that he could remain in power indefinitely. Xi is on and heads so many different decision-making bodies that he has been referred to as the chairman of everything. If that wasn't enough to scare you, Xi despises Christianity and has condemned Chinese officials who have sought to look to God to help solve their problems and believes that Christianity is an attempt by foreign influences to subvert his nation. Under his leadership, critics and political analysts have said that China has witnessed a serious deterioration in human rights, a huge increase in censorship, and a significant increase in surveillance of the people. Chinese politics are very cloistered, so we don't know exactly how much power he holds, but I'm quite sure it's significant. There is no question he holds exponentially more power than does Joe Biden. I mean, I think anyone with 2 eyes and a brain can clearly see that Joe Biden isn't really in charge of anything, and that there are people behind the scenes, some we know, some we don't, that are running the show in the US. At least now, for the time being, until January when Trump gets sworn in. So that was a brief overview of the man in charge of China, who I personally consider to be our greatest adversary. But before we get into an explanation of the title of this episode, let's first look at the power that China holds over our everyday lives. I'm just going to throw a few sets of numbers at you here to help add some context to exactly how much power China holds over us. In a 2021 study by the Bureau of Industry and Security, it was estimated that of the 68.5 billion of miscellaneous manufactured items from China that accounted for 53.2% of total U.S. imports of those commodities. The U.S. national debt held by China was $816 billion as of August 2024. China has spent $418 million since 2016 to try to influence American politics, more than any other country. According to the FBI, the annual cost to the U.S. economy of counterfeit goods, pirated software, and theft of trade secrets by China is between $225 to $600 billion. It is estimated that Chinese-owned social media company TikTok makes over $16 billion in yearly revenue, the majority of that coming from U.S. operations alone. On the subject of TikTok, do any of my listeners have TikTok? Lots of people, including a lot of my friends, have and love TikTok. TikTok was founded in 2012 by a team of people including Zhang Yiming and Liang Rubo, and is operated under the parent company named ByteDance Limited. The company is headquartered in Beijing and incorporated in the Cayman Islands. The U.S. government has been seeking for quite some time to limit or even ban TikTok from being used in the United States. Those of you that have or know people that have TikTok can attest to the undeniable power it holds over its users. Let's talk about a few of the infamous TikTok trends or challenges that have gone viral and had our kids and users attempting to fulfill some of these dangerous actions. The first is the Benadryl challenge, in which users have said that taking too much Benadryl at one time can get you high and start to hallucinate. Next is the blackout challenge, in which an individual has to hold their breath before having another individual press them against the wall until they black out or pass out. Another is the Cha-Cha Slide challenge, in which users are asked to drive to the rhythm of the Cha-Cha Slide by DJ Casper. TikTok users have been repeatedly seen swerving and driving recklessly in their cars. Finally is the aerosol challenge, in which users spray a highly flammable aerosol spray into a lighter to create a makeshift flamethrower. Now, I personally do not currently have TikTok, so I'm probably not current with any of the very latest trends or challenges, but you people do see a problem with this, right? These are usually Americans, almost always kids or minors, that are doing these challenges, pretty much all of which are stupid, and many of which can or have been life-threatening. Even for the posts and trends that aren't dangerous or life-threatening, it is astounding the level at which TikTok has and continues to influence our daily lives. But TikTok isn't the only social media that China uses to try to influence the U.S. In 2022, YouTube reporting shutting down over 53,000 channels because they are part of Chinese influence operations. In 2023, Meta, the parent company of Facebook, reported that it had taken down 5 Chinese networks of fake accounts and has warned against increased online social media influence operations. Now that we're done discussing social media, let's talk about land. The United States has a total area of 3,809,525 square miles of land. Of all the foreign countries that own U.S. land, Canada is the largest, owning an estimated 12.8 million acres, which is more than the entire area of Vermont and New Hampshire combined. So then it shouldn't be concerning that China owns a very small percentage of land compared to countries such as Canada, which has said China only owns less than 1%, right? Wrong. It isn't so much a concern of how much U.S. land that China owns, it's where that land is. In an article by the New York Post, they revealed that China has purchased and owns land very close to 19 different U.S. military bases across the U.S. from Florida to Hawaii, including some of our nation's most strategically important bases: MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida, Camp Pendleton in San Diego, California, Fort Cazanos in Killeen, Texas, and Fort Liberty in Fayetteville, North Carolina. In 2023, the Wall Street Journal printed a report in September 2023 that claimed that Chinese intruders have attempted to breach U.S. military facilities over 100 times in recent years. The Department of Homeland Security has also warned of Chinese spies slipping across the U.S. southern border, which has been extremely accessible to illegal aliens and drug cartels more than ever since the beginning of the Biden administration. Experts believe that China will be using these properties to evaluate U.S. capabilities and troop movements in and out of bases to both gauge our response to any kind of crisis or war, as well as evaluate our military capabilities. It, of course, isn't out of the question that they may try to use their own advanced military technology to try to penetrate our defenses at our military bases in the event of a war, and use these properties as a staging area. Although no one knows exactly how advanced Chinese military technology is these days, it has been suggested that China possesses some of the most advanced drones and surveillance systems in the world, with rumors that they at least match U.S. military technology and possess stealth drones and possibly even some kind of cloaking technology. Of course, this is all hearsay, and I have zero proof of this. It's just been circulated before in conspiracy circles. But if you look online and find a U.S. map that shows the locations of property owned by individuals or entities that have been linked to the CCP, it is extremely alarming. Another extremely alarming thing that many people might not have ever heard of is the existence of Chinese police stations inside the continental U.S. Police stations, you might ask? How is that even possible? Well, it isn't the kind of police station that you and I know. No, these so-called police stations are used by the CCP to persuade Chinese people living in the U.S. who may have sympathetic views of the United States to return to China. They actively monitor and surveil Chinese nationals and even U.S.-born Chinese that they consider a possible threat to China. The CCP has gone so far as to threaten the family members of Chinese people living in the U.S. that still reside in China, reportedly denying them the right to an education, work, and possibly even threatening imprisonment. Chinese police stations have been found in New York and Los Angeles and have been reported to be in over 53 countries across the globe. Speaking of surveillance, possibly the greatest threat to the U.S. today is that of Chinese espionage. I could talk for hours about the countless times that Chinese nationals have been caught either stealing or attempting to steal American technology and secrets. A recent case involves a Chinese national that was charged with 2 violations of the Espionage Act after flying a drone over Newport News shipbuilding yard in Virginia. Feng Yunqi was flying a drone outside the 65th Street and Huntington Avenue entrance of Newport News shipbuilding when it struck a tree. The SD card retrieved from the drone footage revealed footage taken of U.S. Navy vessels under construction, which is violation of the Espionage Act. He was sentenced and will serve only 6 months in prison. But this is far from the only time that this has happened. Quite the opposite. This has happened countless times, including when Chinese tourists were caught swimming and taking pictures of the Navy base in Key West, Chinese nationals taking pictures in an Army base near White Sands National Park, and when a group of Chinese nationals attempted to push past guards at Alaska's Fort Wainwright, claiming they had hotel reservations on base. These are just a few examples of instances that we know about. There's no telling how many more have happened that we don't know about. Probably even more concerning than Chinese nationals surveilling our military bases is the terrifying ability that Chinese hackers have to gain access to U.S. government and civilian computer systems. Between May and July of 2017, National Credit Reporting Bureau Equifax was hacked by members of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, although to this day, China still denies any involvement. The private records of over 163 million people, including over 147 million Americans, 15 million British, and 19,000 Canadian citizens was compromised. Equifax did not report the breach until September of 2017. In February 2020, the U.S. government indicted members of the Chinese People's Liberation Army for the Equifax hack, as well as stealing other trade secrets. In March of this year, 7 hackers associated with the Chinese government were charged with computer intrusions targeting perceived critics of China and U.S. businesses and politicians. The hackers spent 14 years targeting the U.S. assets in an effort to further China's economic and foreign intelligence objectives. As recently as last week, Chinese hackers breached a U.S. telecoms network, appearing to target Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, possibly to try to influence the U.S. presidential election. In a joint statement issued by the FBI and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, they said that they are aggressively investigating and attempting to mitigate a breach linked to the Chinese Communist Party. These are just a few examples. These attacks are so frequent, and as I've said before, there is no telling how many that we don't know about. Between cyber attacks and possible future attacks on our power grid, to me, this is the clear number one most concerning thing that we need to be worried about in regards to China. China has the technology and, more importantly, the motivation to try to cripple U.S. infrastructure. There is no day that I wake up that I wouldn't be surprised to see and experience a Chinese orchestrated attack on our infrastructure and power grid. And then, along with the absolutely humiliating withdrawal from Afghanistan, there is one of the most embarrassing moments of Joe Biden's presidency. The Chinese spy balloon that flew over our airspace from January 28th to February 4th in 2023. The balloon was initially detected after it was launched from Hainan in China, and our government allowed it to fly over the entire continental U.S. before finally shooting it down off the coast of South Carolina. Debris of the wreckage was sent to the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, and it was determined that the balloon was indeed carrying intelligence gathering equipment. Joe Biden to this day still claims that it was not a major breach and that no significant intelligence was gathered. Of course, that is the official story. But how in the world was this allowed to happen in the first place? Why was the balloon not shot down before entering U.S. airspace? Just another embarrassing and unacceptable instance of China being allowed to continually spy on America and its citizens. So we've talked about and discussed TikTok and social media, land, Chinese police stations, surveillance, and espionage. Now let's talk about the people that run our country and China's influence over them. It has been said that China has bought and paid for a large number of our politicians. Anyone familiar with Gavin Newsom? Gavin Newsom is the current Democrat governor of California. Did anyone remember hearing on the news last year about Gavin Newsom meeting with President Xi? Newsom actually traveled to China to discuss climate action, cultural exchange, human rights, democracy, and economic development. Why is the president of one of the most powerful countries in the entire world taking time to meet with a lowly governor of a single state of a country? Following the ousting of Joe Biden as president, and yes, I still don't believe he stepped down willingly, many have suggested, I was one of them, that Newsom would be the one to replace him as the Democratic nominee for president. If you remember, Newsom made the comment on a podcast about Kamala being selected in a 30-minute convention. He and his Chinese overlords clearly wanted him to be the Democratic nominee. But Newsom is far from being the only politician with worrisome ties to China. How about Kamala Harris's VP pick, Tim Walz? Tim Walz moved to China fresh out of college in 1989 and returned there frequently for a decade, taking students on cultural exchanges. He has both criticized China and spoken highly of his time there. Does anyone think it's possible he was doing more than taking students on cultural exchanges? Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona has disturbing ties to China, having received millions in funding from Tencent, one of China's largest tech companies, for his ventures into space tourism and defense contracting. Linda Sun, an aide to several high-ranking New York Democratic lawmakers, was recently charged with acting as an undisclosed agent of China and the CCP, taking place in money laundering, visa fraud, and bringing in aliens. I'm telling you, I could go on and on and on with the level of corruption in our government and how deeply China has influenced our politics and our politicians. So I could clearly talk about this issue for days and continue to give you specific examples of Chinese intrusion into our government, our society, and our culture. It's so deep and embedded, it is astounding. You always hear the legacy media talking about Vladimir Putin and Russia. Yes, Russia has been one of our greatest adversaries, But the truth is, most of Russia's military equipment is old and quickly becoming obsolete. Their navy is aging and doesn't challenge that of the U.S. The only real existential threat from Russia is their nuclear arsenal. But let's be real here. Nuclear weapons are just a scare tactic used by major world powers to put on a poker face to try to intimidate each other. Every country and world leader knows that if they launch a nuclear weapon in another country, that country would immediately launch a retaliatory attack. It would be utter destruction, and what good is controlling power if there's no one left to control and hold power over? That is why countries and political actors engage in fifth-generation warfare. And apart from the U.S., no one does it better than China. I'm telling you, China is the one who we truly need to be concerned with, and if another world war ever breaks out, who would be the ones we should be concerned with? Well, that's my show for this week. I apologize about some of my pronunciation there. Obviously, I'm not from China, so I don't know how to pronounce all their different precincts and cities and that sort of thing. So apologies on that. But thank you so much for listening. Please remember to like and follow the show on X, Facebook, and Truth Social, or you can email me at thepppodcast@yahoo.com. Until next week.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode. And stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.